Bangladesh Army General Waker-uz-Zaman announced the resignation of Awami League leader Sheikh Hasina and the formation of an 18-member interim government. The interim government would be led by Mohammad Yunis. Before I play out the bite of the army chief, let me introduce the guest, Ambassador Humayun Kabir, former Secretary Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bangladesh. Sir, breaking news development has taken place, and that is Sheikh Hasina's son has told BBC that there will be no coming back of her mother. Is it end of the road for Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh politics, sir?
Well, it looks like so, because the people rose up against her, and after so much of death, so much of killings, and so much of destruction, I don't think there would be much scope to expect anything other than that.
Why did Sheikh Hasina not get the pulse of people, sir? Why didn't she get the pulse of people? Is there a reason? Is it a plain case of hubris?
In a way, because, she has, I would say that two last elections, in 2014 and 2018, both this election and also this one, which took place a few months back, these three elections were basically, I would say that the participation of people were much less. And if I may put it, it was managed somehow or other. So that alienated a large segment of the population, and particularly the younger generation, because as you know, younger generation is always interested to demonstrate their right or demonstrate their capacity as a citizen. So I think that really created some alienation. And when somebody is in power, their sycophants are all around, and they always sing the same story before the power that be, and that perhaps may have created some alienation, and that's why perhaps she couldn't really understand the pulse of the people.
Okay, there are many more questions waiting for you, sir, but let me play out the bite of the army chief.
The Honourable Prime Minister has resigned from her post, and we will form an interim government for now to run the country. I had invited leaders from all political parties and we had a discussion. We have decided to form an interim government. The country will be now run by an interim government. We are now going to meet the Honourable President and will discuss about the formation of the interim government under which the country is going to run as of now. Please keep faith and trust in the army. I take the responsibility and I promise to protect the lives and property of the people. Don't lose faith in the army. God willing, we will fulfill your demands and bring peace and harmony back to the country. I request to you all to support the army and stop the violence, murders, hooliganism and the protest.
I'm also joined by Salim Samad, independent journalist and rights defender. He's joining me live from Dhaka. What's the situation right now, sir? Mr. Salim, am I audible to you?
Unbelievable what it's like. I mean, after 1971, I've not seen this sort of jubilation in Bangladesh.
At last, the other forces completely took over the protest, and the people in power could not gauge the intensity of it.
I think there wasn't the people in power, there was one person in power, and she could not gauge it because of her arrogance. I mean, she had a lot of chances. In fact, one of the demands that had been made was that she apologize for the comments that she'd made. That's a simple thing to do, but for a tyrant, that's not easy. And she essentially...
Okay, I think there's a bit of a technical problem. Protesters also stormed the residence of Sheikh Hasina, ransacked her house, people celebrated in the streets, distributed sweets with security persons. They were celebrating it. Not only this, the people also vandalized the statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh. And let me play out those visuals. Some of the visuals are from the residence of Sheikh Hasina. People are eating. But then this is the iconic visual. The statue of Mujibur Rahman was vandalized. And in midst of all, Sheikh Hasina landed in India at the Hindon airport in Ghaziabad and is likely to fly off to London from India with her sister. So coming back to you, sir, Mr. Kabir, what is the future of Awami League in the politics of Bangladesh?
Well, Awami League will have to, Awami League was a party very close to the people, but it looks like that during the last 15 years, Awami League has gone far away from the people. So if Awami League wants to remain relevant to the context and relevant for the people, then they will have to think differently than what they have been doing during the last decade and a half.
But do you think that the Awami League will get a different leader, sir? There might be a change?
It's up to them, because we are not a part of that. So Awami League, if it wants to remain as an active political party, then they will have to choose their leader, because Sheikh Hasina was the president, she has left now, so they have their own system or arrangement, and they will decide whom they want to choose as their leader.
Okay, so what is the future of Awami League is everyone's guess. But the protest that started as a student protest against quotas took on an anti-government turn. Why did that happen? Protests which began in July over a High Court judgment which reinstated 30% quota for families of war veterans soon turned violent, and over 200 people lost their lives in the violence that ensued for weeks. However, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh scrapped the quota, and Sheikh Hasina agreed to one of the core demands of the student protesters, which was to quash the quota. There was a quiet and a peace for a while after the demands of the students were met, but Sheikh Hasina banned JAMAAT-E-ISLAMI, whom she had blamed for inflaming the violence. On Sunday, violence broke out once again in Bangladesh, leading to more violence. So the question is, what did Sheikh Hasina miss, and how has BNP gained? Mr. Kabir, how has BNP gained? Can you just take this?
It's not clear yet, because the students who led and organized this uprising, I should say, they didn't say clearly, or nor we have any evidence to suggest that they are either supporting this party or that party. So it was essentially student-led non-political movement at the beginning, as you have rightly pointed out. But I think they were ridiculed, they were not ignored, taunted, and then subsequently it led to violence against students. I mean, unarmed students were killed by the party goons and then police, and that really enraged the whole student community, and they rose up. And when the students were being butchered, then the common people felt that it was something that they couldn't stand or tolerate any longer, and then they joined, different walks of people joined the students, and then it turned into a massive, you can say, uprising, and millions of people 2 days back were on the street. Today it was there. It was a curfew, but within the curfew, people broke curfew and just flooded the streets of Dhaka. Millions of people, young people, old people, handicapped people, women, children. I mean, it was something to be seen. And I am familiar with our movements in 60s, 68, 69 movement, then 71 liberation movement. I would say this is something that I have not seen in my lifetime. This is a unique experience. And
is it similar? Is it, Mr. Kabir, can you give us a larger perspective of history? It's like the Sri Lankan thing, where the people just came, took over the streets.
In a way, yes. Some people were talking about that, and you have mentioned about the house. I mean, the Gana Bhavan that you call it. People rushed into that and thronged into the house. They enjoyed their time there. Some people took, whatever they could get, enjoyed. And you can see somebody is showing a fish in his hand. Somebody showing goats. I mean, it was something like a picnic, because people had a sense of victory, sense of joy, jubilation. So they were trying to express that in whichever manner they could do it. And I think it was a spontaneous kind of situation, and at times it was funny. People were taking commode as a trophy. I mean, but we understand that this is a kind of, after so much of struggle, so much of uncertainty, it looks like that they have achieved something. I mean, for which they have been agitating for the last few months.
Okay. You stay with me, please don't go away. I'm also joined by Shahidul Alam, author and social activist. Mr. Alam, Thank you so much for joining me from Dhaka. Mr. Alam, am I audible to you?
What?
I think Alam's video has freeze. Salim Samad, am I audible to you? Mr.
Yes, I
Salim
think so.
Samad?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Mr. Samad, we are talking to you from Delhi and you are in Dhaka. Have the protests died down for today? Or the people still out there?
Look, the protest has already turned into a celebration. So there is no more protest. So they have nothing to achieve. There was only one point demand for the Sheikh Hasina to quit. So that has already happened. So there is no more protest. So they have transformed it into jubilation, as Ambassador Humayun Kabir has said. And of course, their revealers are visible. And of course, you can definitely compare it with Colombo. You can also compare with Kabul. You can also compare with Tunisia. So this has happened in many other countries. Maybe you will see more in this region.
Why did these protests become so big? You know, a lot of people just did not understand that protests were against the quota system. Why did the anti-quota protests turn into anti-Hasina protests?
For one simple reason. That's very simple. It's simple maths. 2 plus 2. The protest was absolutely non-violent. They had no sticks, no rubber, no bullets. So I'm talking about the students. The students were on the 15th of July were attacked by the so-called helmet Bahini, which is vigilante created by the Awami League. So that really sparked the protest. From 16th, 17th, in fact, the police also got engaged and shot nearly 200 people had died. So that really caused from a 8-point demand to 1-point demand that Sheikh Hasina should quit. So that has happened. And it is all the failure of our regime. That she converted the regime into an autocratic regime. Obviously, you cannot expect anything more from an autocratic regime having so much of draconian laws, and of course getting the opposition, routed out the opposition, put them behind bars. At one time there were 11,000 opposition in the prison in the last election, in the last December. So you can understand. So there are a lot of anger.
Okay. You know, Mr. Samad, you can give a very contrarian view, and Mr. Kabir, I would like you to come on this. A lot of people in Delhi would see it from a perspective of national security, that how India would be affected. But this is also like a social churn in Bangladesh, in which a prime minister had to flee the country, like Rajapaksa had to flee its country. Do you think that this may create a political space for the Islamists because the protest acquired a religious tenor, sir?
I don't see that. I don't see that. And these young people are quite smart. I mean, just a few minutes back, I was listening to some of them, and they said very clearly that they have been demonstrating for creating a discrimination-free Bangladesh. So now, may I remind our audience that in 1971, I was one of the small, you can say, activists during 1971, trained in India at that time. So we were fighting for our democratic rights in 1971. We were fighting for getting a discrimination-free society. We are fighting to get our justice. So these young people are exactly resonating these values, and I think that unnecessarily putting other, I would say, other hairs or other angle into it will complicate the matter. So I can tell you, as far as I am concerned, India has said that this is Bangladesh. This is an internal affair. I think this is an internal affair, and I don't anticipate that the movement or the new government that is coming up that will substantially change or change the course of our foreign policy, our relationship with India or any other country, for example, because this is something that we have been experiencing within the country. I mean, you all know that. I mean, in Bangladesh, we fought for a discrimination-free society. But during the last 15, 20 years, Bangladesh has become two countries, two societies, one rich, the richest, their growth rate was the highest in the world. And on the other hand, common people are suffering. And particularly during the last 2 years' time after COVID, I mean, inflation, economic crisis for the common people. On the other hand, flight of capital taking place, banks were being looted, and then people were amassing huge amount of money, corruption, and all these were being done under the political patronage. So that really affected people very badly, and that's why people have reacted. So I don't believe that it will have much impact on our external relations. These are internal management issues, and the student leaders are still saying, just a few minutes back, they exactly said that our purpose, our movement will continue to pursue those issues which we dream to see Bangladesh as a discrimination-free country, a modern country, technologically advanced country, well-educated society, and so on and so forth. So I think the focus is still on the internals.
Mr. Samad, you know, there's a lot of apprehension in other countries that religious sentiments would acquire a prominent position in political life of Bangladesh. Is it correct or is it a perception? It's an open question, sir, without adjective.
No. I can definitely laugh at you because the Islamist has no constituency in Bangladesh. You have to understand, if you don't believe, that's up to you. It's up to the audience. The JAMAAT-E-ISLAMI has only 4% vote for the last several elections. And JAMAAT-E-ISLAMI has been banned by the Election Commission under the directive of a body from a Supreme Court. The JAMAAT-E-ISLAMI has no stand in the next election. The only yes, you are talking about the Islamist party that I think which is a bigger threat is the Hifazat-e-Islam. And Hifazat-e-Islam has been patronized under the Sheikh Hasina's regime. She herself was the chief guest in the last year in their annual function held in Dhaka. And they have closed all the roads to help them to organize. And Hifazat has even doctored the textbook where they mention that Islam has to be very much in the textbook. And that has been done by Sheikh Hasina's regime. You cannot blame anybody else. Sheikh Hasina's regime was also, by the new draconian law for the Digital Security Act and the Cyber Security Act, later changed, they have introduced a blasphemy, which if this blasphemy law had been introduced by Sheikh Hasina, Khaleda Zia, or the military generals, I would have accepted it, but not Sheikh Hasina. She pretended to be a secular, and she all has done which is anti-secular, and she has not taken the perpetrators of justice who have vandalized the Hindu temples the last 15 years. She cannot give a single example of giving justice to the Hindus in Bangladesh.
Aditya, your take? I heard that Ajit Doval met Sheikh Hasina.
Well, absolutely, Kartikeya. This is a big development that's coming in. The first representative, a senior representative, because of course Sheikh Hasina was received by officers of the Indian Air Force at the Hindon Air Force Base. She was at the lounge station for the last couple of hours, and NSA Ajit Doval came inside the Air Force Base at Hindon in Ghaziabad, adjacent to New Delhi. An hour back, he had an hour-long meeting with Sheikh Hasina, and he has left since just a few minutes back. We do not know what has transpired in the meeting, but it's likely that he officially welcomed her to India, asked her about her safety or her plans to stay in India or to move to London or any other foreign destination. We'll come to know in the next few hours. There are many things that are planned. I'm being told that there could be Sheikh Hasina leaving for London at around 1 a.m. Midnight, or perhaps to a European country. So we'll have to wait and watch. We also know that Sheikh Hasina has been engaged in a few phone calls over the last couple of hours, diplomatic conversations that are ongoing. There were reports that UK has denied her political asylum? I personally do not believe so. I don't think UK has come out with any such statement of denial of political asylum. There are many Middle Eastern countries and European countries who have regularly given political asylum to leaders, and Sheikh Hasina could be one of them who would be reaching out to either Europe or UK and could leave as early as midnight today, but it all depends on the diplomatic conversations that are ongoing right now. Also, Kartike, what I can tell you is that sister of Sheikh Hasina, Rehana, is a UK citizen. She is a Britisher, and that's why their first choice is UK. Lastly, I can tell you, Kartike, this also signals in many ways the end of the political career of Sheikh Hasina from such a vibrant and a politically rich family of Bangladesh, and the way, in a very embarrassing manner, she had to leave. There seems to be no U-turn now, no way back to Dhaka. Certainly, there is no road for Sheikh Hasina that leads to Dhaka.
Okay, let me straight away go to Salim Samad sir now. Am I audible to you, sir? There was a bit of a problem, connecting you from Dhaka, Wi-Fi issues. Am I audible to you, sir? Mr. Shahid, let me go across to Shahidul Alam. Am I audible to you, sir?
Yes,
Mr.
I can
Alam,
hear
am
you.
I audible to you, sir, now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So now the protests have ended, as my previous commentators who are still there with me in the show, Mr. Kabir and Mr. Samad said, it is about celebration. Now the protests have turned into celebration. What is the road Bangladesh is going to take now under a new interim government, sir?
Well, the celebration is pretty obvious. We've been tormented for many, many years, and people had their backs against the wall. I mean, you had earlier asked why it was the quota that led to it. It wasn't the quota. The quota was merely the fuse that lit the tinderbox. I think people had their backs against the wall with injustice for so many years. The fact that 30 million youngsters haven't had a chance to vote are all part of this equation. And of course, it could have been very easily handled. All she had to do, they had wanted her to apologize, but then tyrants aren't prone to apologizing generally. And there was no one within the party who had the temerity to be telling her that that was the thing to do. So it led to this. The irony is, the sad thing is that so many people died in the process. She would have had to leave, and she's left, but had she left earlier, she would have saved a lot of lives. That hasn't happened. But the celebration today is a little bit like the celebration that I hear had happened in 1975 when Mujib was assassinated. The people's sweets were being distributed in the streets at that time. There is so much made of Mujib, and it is true that he did lead the War of Liberation, though he himself didn't participate actively, he was in jail. But he did set up Rukhi Bahini, he did set up Bakshal, and he destroyed democracy in Bangladesh. His daughter, I think, has actually done the maximum amount of damage she could have done to his image, what was left of him. So that too. But I would like to bring up something that you've not mentioned, which I think is pertinent. On the footage, you see an ambulance being attacked by the students, by the protesters. Now, the protesters have actually been very good. They've not attacked ambulances. They've allowed them through. They've been very responsible. But this particular ambulance was being attacked because it had an Indian flag on it. And India today is the most hated country in Bangladesh. And that is something that needs to be reminded. The Indian government has literally propped up this regime for so long, and so much has been given to India in the sense, in the effort to keep Hasina in power. Now India needs to do a lot of work to win back. It certainly had Hasina in its pocket, but it lost the Bangladeshi people, and now it has to do a lot of work to win it back.
I think that's a strong statement. Do you agree, Aditya?
We have to agree. There are friends, in democracy, in diplomacy, and then, governments don't stay forever. In this case, however, there was a lot of anger for years together on Sheikh Hasina. You might say that she believed to an extent in democracy and secularism, but there were grave corruption charges against her. Her dictatorial approach was targeted and attacked several times democratically, and otherwise there were, of course, a lot of radicals also who were vehemently against her. And, India has been a very close strategic partner. Now, these protesters certainly, unfortunately, cannot differentiate between a strategic partner and somebody who is deliberately trying to help. We were not deliberately trying to prop up this kind of regime, but yes, we had a strategic partnership with Sheikh Hasina, and unfortunately that phase has completely ended now. And now whoever will be in power, will have to strive for a better relation for India, as would New Delhi will have to have a better ties, because we are the closest neighbors. And we have been 911 call for several countries around in South Asia, including Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan and Pakistan. So as of now, we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. But unfortunately, if history looks at Sheikh Hasina, many would say that she has completely, I agree with the previous speaker, destroyed the legacy of Mujibur Rahman in many ways. She hasn't been able to, uphold the kind of dynamism that he gave Bangladesh. He was the father of the nation, and the kind of anger and the attack on the portraits of Mujibur Rahman is not the anger towards Mujibur Rahman. It is anger towards Sheikh Hasina.
Mr. Alam, there's a saying: if the popular response is illiberal, then liberal response often becomes undemocratic. Was this the case with Sheikh Hasina?
I think Sheikh Hasina has been a tyrant for a very, very long time. The gentleman was being very kind at that stage, but literally the litany of corruption, of injustice, the disappearances, the extrajudicial killings that have happened for such a long time is unbelievable. And the fact that hundreds of people were murdered in the last few days merely because she had to hang on to power talks about who the person was. The problem is she was surrounded by psychopaths, and as tyrants are often, there was no one within the party who was able to question her. So really, right till the end, it's impossible for me to know, but I was told that Rehana had been brought in to try and convince her that she had to leave. She had become a liability, but I will remind the gentleman before me that the relationship with India is not as friendly as it might be stated as such. There was a young man called Abra Fahad who had on social media critiqued Modi's visit to Bangladesh. He was pummeled to death. He was murdered in the university dorm because he'd been critical of India. And being critical of India is something that just would not have been tolerated by this regime.
Fair enough. I agree to your point, but there's an other side to the story as well. We've seen in these protests, in the garb of so-called democratic protests, we've seen Hindus and minorities being killed and lynched on the streets. Would you condone that? I mean, we've seen this other side. It's very cool to, attack India at this particular stage. But what about those minority killings in which BNP and the Jamaat have been involved over the last 48 hours?
Killings of any form are unacceptable, and certainly killings of minorities should not happen in any country at any form. What India does is something we know very well, so India should not be lecturing us on that. But certainly one of the tasks for us right now is to ensure that all minorities are protected. The students who came on television a little while ago were very responsible. They took pains to ensure that that's happening. What is happening right now is chaotic. What is happening right now is violent. And certainly that has to be put a stop to. There is absolutely no problem in terms of Bangladeshi people's relationship with Indian people. It's the Indian government's relationship to its neighbors that is our problem.
Okay. Mr. Samad, you must have heard the discussion, but there's also another side. There's another side of the story, and the other side of the story is that do you think that the interim government would be able to shape things out? And Mr. Yunis is being considered as the. Is it correct?
No, that's absolutely wrong.
Okay. So what's going to be?
Why is your most reputed news media is listening to rumors? First of all, I'm talking about the interim government. The interim government is not supposed to only have the mandate according to the constitution to hold an election. That's it. They have nothing. They have no right. They have no authority to change any law, enact new laws. No, they cannot. So they only have 90 days time to hold a free and inclusive election. That has not happened in the last 15 years.
Stay with me. I think Mr. Humayun Kabir wanted to say something. Mr. Kabir, you wanted to come in?
No, I'm just, I've got another program, so I wanted to.
No, I will not let go of you for next 5 minutes, sir. I think you can make that concession for us. It was very difficult to get you the other perspective. It's very easy to have an in-house debate on this. But, you know, as Mr. Samad said, 90 days and to hold the elections. But 90 days they also will be required to hold the country.
Yeah, I think the scenario that is likely to unfold, I think the people is now going back home. People are going back home, and then they will wait for you know how things develop. For example, the injustice or killing that has been that has taken place. I think some actions should be taken against those who are responsible, and then perhaps the interim government will take its own responsibility. And I think it is possible because people are hungry for casting their votes. So if the interim government decides to hold an election, and that should be a logical, I would say, a process, in that case, I think we can overcome the bomb that we are having this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Samad, you know, a couple of questions for you. You know, you have been talking about Bangladesh and Sheikh Hasina being tyrant. What sort of structural reforms you would expect the fresh government to take over after the interim government? As a journalist, as a political analyst.
I'm not a political analyst, I'm a journalist. And I'm a media rights activist. So what is happening is that the constitution has given a mandate how to run the country. The Sheikh Hasina has always flouted the election, flouted the constitution. So the constitution has a mandate to have a democrat, socialist, secular election, government. That has been totally destroyed by Sheikh Hasina. She has destroyed all the institutions, like the judiciary has been totally collapsed many years back. You are talking about the media, that has also collapsed because of the draconian laws. They can arrest, harass, intimidate a newspaper without any response. And the second thing is that she has also destroyed the police force, the law enforcing agencies. They have recruited all the recruits are from the Chhatra League. All the recruits are from her party. So how can you expect? So now let the police protect Hasina. She has been recruiting them for the last 15 years. So that boy who has been recruited in the first year is now 15 years old, 15 years senior in the police force, 15 years senior to a magistrate. So imagine what she has destroyed. And as I will not repeat about her corruption, and he allowed corruption. She allowed money laundering. She allowed the banks to be looted. She allowed people buying in the Begumpara, in Dubai, in Malaysia, in the United States, in Canada, Australia. So she has allowed this to happen. And all the people who are around her, the psychopaths, the Awami leaders, and of course some bureaucrats, they have looted the country.
What sort of a future, sir, do you see for BNP, the political space?
Frankly speaking, the BNP is not in a very good shape. Number one, because they do not have support in the grassroots. That grassroots means the constituencies in the villages. They have a very weak, I would not say they are totally absent. In many places, they are totally absent. And plus, the BNP is little, I would not use the word fragile, but it has already, there's a crack. So there are three groups in the BNP. So I'm not sure which part of BNP will be able to contest this election. Of course, they will. For this time, they will definitely come to the contest to the election. So there is another, and let me remind you that the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, and as well as Jatu Party, which is presently the loyal opposition in the parliament, is all created by the military from the cantonment.
What sort of a role you expect military to play now, sir?
Military has no role because the constitution doesn't allow anything for them to do. The only thing they can do is ensure safety and security and ensure there's a free and fair election. That's it.
Are we going to see emergence of new political players in short run or a long run? You said that obviously there is so much of ire against Awami League. You said BNP is weak. So are we going to see new players emerging, new people emerging in Bangladesh politics, new parties? Is there a scope?
I don't think it will happening in 90 days. You cannot have a new party in 90 days because that has to be registered, and there are long process of this registration. That's little difficulty for them to in 90 days. If they get us at least a year, maybe that can happen. Maybe after the election there will be new party. So the party is again all, if you go around, it is again Awami League and the BNP and the Jati parties. There is no, and there is another which is the socialist and the left, but they are very weak. So it's very weak. So obviously the power sharing in the next after the election will along these three.
Okay. Oh, that's very interesting. Mr. Alam, I was having this conversation with Mr. Samad in context of, is there a possibility of new players to come in? Because he was saying that the BNP is weak. Obviously, people are not going to vote for Awami League now. So is there a new political space emerging in Bangladesh?
There is a political space, but I don't think there is yet the political structure. I mean, these parties are very new. They've been working very hard. They are trying to get there, but traditionally, it has been a two-party country for a very, very long time. And even with Hasina gone, there are die-hard Army Leaguers who will still support Army League, despite all the things that they've done. The BNP is weak, as Samad had said, but it's also got, skeletons in its closet too. I mean, it's done enough harm on its own, certainly not to this extent, but, there are things that have to happen. What I would like is that there should be a plurality within the political space. And even if independents come in and other people come in, the fact that they can challenge this dynasty politics in our country is something that's very, very necessary. The left has been very fragmented. And to a very large extent, the new parties are politically mature, but they have actually played a very good role in recent years. So I would not give up on them. I think there is potential.
So you are not going to give up on them. But there is another aspect to it. Do you think there will be a recalibration of relationship between Dhaka and New Delhi post-elections?
India is a very powerful state. I mean, we cannot have a bad relationship with India. That's just not practical. That's not diplomatic, that's not practical, and we don't want that. There is no reason why Bangladesh should have a poor relationship with India, but it should not be a subservient relationship. It should not be a relationship whereby we give our sovereignty away. It should not be a vassal state. And to a very, very large extent, that is the way India has behaved towards us. If you look at all the concessions that have been made to India over the years, and the numerous promises in terms of water sharing and everything else that's meant to have happened, it has been extremely one-sided. And I think India needs to wake up and recognize that if it wants a good relationship with Bangladesh, which it should have, it has to behave responsibly.
Aditya, do you think that is this a larger challenge for Indian diplomacy that despite doing its bit, you still get those popular protests in Nepal in which India is accused of being a big brother. Even in Bangladesh, India is accused of being a big brother. This is the big dilemma, despite.
Karthikeya, at a time when India is talking about this not being an era of war, at a time when India has not stood with one axis or the other in the two ongoing wars, this clearly suggests that India believes in peace. India believes in having and maintaining good strategic partnership and people-to-people contact with countries. No matter who is in power in Bangladesh, India will be good to them. India does not dictate terms just like China does. So one has to realize that, you cannot give an intellectual cover or an intellectual base to the kind of violence that we have seen over the last few days in Bangladesh. You can't, attack the Chief Justice's house. You can't lynch the minorities. You can't lynch 14 police officers in Sirajganj and then say that these are democratic protests led by students and there is no involvement of any radical elements. Are you trying to condone the kind of violence that we have seen over the last many days? Yes. You might say that Sheikh Hasina was corrupt, she was inept, she was not able to lead her people to progress, prosperity, and give a peaceful leadership, a stable leadership. But that does not mean that you kill people, lynch people on the streets, and then give the cover of a democratic rebellion and a color revolution that is taking place. So, India certainly is at a very challenging situation right now, not just in context of Bangladesh, but several other neighbors that have gone far away or have had domestic disturbance, internal conflict in many ways, be it in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, or Maldives, the latest example as well. So, India will have to walk this tough rope. Perhaps, the only countries that I see friendly are right now Mauritius, Seychelles, and Bhutan. Is that enough? Will that really be the road ahead? But it will take time. India will find a way to have a good relation with whichever government really comes to power right now. There will be interim government in place. It will take a few months, and perhaps it might take a couple of years. But we have a very important person like Jaishankar at the helm of affairs, and I completely agree. India did not get a free hand or a long rope in Bangladesh because India has a significant power of its own. India is trustworthy. That's why the Bangladesh government believed in us. And how did Bangladesh get created? India played a critical role in that entire process. India could have just stood there watching, but India supported them. That does not mean that India will always be there even when there is massive corruption and internal conflict. It's an internal matter of Bangladesh, and they will have to find a way to both democracy and a stable, peaceful government.
Mr. Samad, there are some eerie similarities also. If like, for example, when the protests took place in Tunisia in 2011, they were called the Velvet Revolution. The similar protests were replicated throughout West Asia and Northern Africa. If you look at the protests in Sri Lanka, there is one thing which is eerily similar. People like to know how politicians live, what they eat, yes, where they sleep. Did you see that similarity? People. I saw those videos, and then I recalled, this is what happened in Sri Lanka. They went inside the palace, they went to the kitchen, they went to the bedroom.
Yes. You are very right. Yes, they did. Yes, they did it in Kabul also. You can blame the Taliban because they are rogue elements. Yes, you can do that. And I can understand that one of your speakers is very arrogant towards the students' protest.
Not arrogant, Mr. Samad. You can differ with him. You can differ.
No, he's very critical.
He can be critical. Yeah, you can differ. Yeah, yes, you can differ. Yeah, you can say critical, not arrogant, sir.
You cannot. If you are talking about public lynching, this public lynching is happening everywhere in South Asia. Give me a name of one country except
that
Bhutan,
does not mean that you will condone it, sir. And in democracy, we believe in being critical. What is wrong with that?
I am the only person who has condemned it. I am the only person.
I respect that. I completely respect that.
I have also, please Google my articles. I am the only person who has been very critical of this attack on the religious minority. But let me tell you, let me remind you, you have not been very critical about that. Sheikh Hasina has not brought those perpetrators to face the music of justice. And all of the perpetrators from the Awami League, all the perpetrators, I challenge you. I have been there. All the attacks that has happened on the vandalism, especially on the mandirs, on the temple, I was there. I had been rushed there, and I found the Awami League is directly involved. Don't blame others, and that's one of the reasons Sheikh Hasina never brought them to court, never arrested them, never brought them to court, and they have possibly been rewarded for that. So this is one issue. I want to bring another very interesting issue. India had always been, as my friend Dr. Shahidul Alam has been mentioning, India has always been on the upper hand on Bangladesh. Yes, 71, of course, people do remember. I am a Liberation War veteran, like Ambassador Humayun Kabir is also a Liberation War veteran. I understand the magnitude, the contribution of India helping to get Bangladesh independent. But I am talking about something else. Please read Pranab Mukherjee's book, his autobiography, for the coalition years. Please read that. And where you will find a chapter where she had mentioned in detail how India, how Delhi has helped Hasina to come back to power in 2008 election. That's it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Samad, maybe, this could have been a sort of a conversation for any other day. Today is a conversation as to what is happening in South Asia. I think it's deeply disturbing for anyone, for any city to be disturbed like this. Yes, it has turned into celebration. It could have gone the other way around. And if you look at from the Delhi's perspective, you have to also account for the fact that there is in Kabul, there Afghanistan, you have a Pakistan, there is a China, there is a Myanmar. But I think there is always a meeting point between India and Bangladesh. There is no denying the fact that, sir, the Bangladesh has been the most stable partner of India, and Indians acknowledge and recognize that. But I thank both of you for joining me from Dhaka with your own critical perspective, the other perspective which I respect, because the News 9, we don't shut our guests out. We don't say that you don't speak, and that is why, sir, I did not interrupt you even once, either Mr. Alam or to you. So thank you both of you. But then these are the visuals which I want to play. This is the nature of protest, Thank you, Mr. Alam, and thank you, Mr. Samad, both of you joining me. But these are the two visuals which I wanted to play. Left is the Sri Lanka and the right is the Dhaka. And in this age of internet, in this age of connectivity, you see how protests can replicate each other, Aditya. And I think it also goes on to tell us that somehow deep down people feel that rich have become richer and poor have become poorer. That is why that is why they have gone inside the kitchen. Kha kya rahe hain? It's such a basic thing. Kha kya rahe hain?
This is
so kaha rahe hain?
This is the frustration coming out. This is a long pending pent up anger and frustration that is coming out in the people, and these are similar scenes that we have seen to an extent in Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, that people who have this kind of a gap from those who are in power, who cannot even think of entering a presidential palace or a prime minister's official residence, get an opportunity to, freely roam around, go inside, perhaps collect some items for memory's sake and keep them. So, the question right now is that the anger has been visible on the streets. The main demand of the protesters, that was the resignation of the Prime Minister, has happened. But now is the key element. How will the interim government and the army and the security forces ensure that there is a peaceful transition, that no more Awami League leaders are killed or lynched, no minorities or places of worship are attacked, and then in the next 60 to 90 days, there is a stable government that is democratically elected.
But from India's context, I think the biggest worry is Northeast.
Absolutely. Northeast and West Bengal as well.
Northeast and West Bengal, those are the Indians' worries, and Indians are justified. But if one has to read the book Blood Telegrams to understand the sort of violence which was perpetrated on minorities and the exodus that has happened. The 1971 war did not only produce Bangladesh, it also produced displaced Bengali Hindus in Northeast, which today are still in the vortex of the politics,
Absolutely.
of the identity politics. So those are the issues which still confront India. And what is happening in Bangladesh is also very worrisome, because Bangladesh in 1980s went through a lot of Islamization. Not one Zia in Pakistan, there was another general in Bangladesh which actually Islamized the society. And Islamic infiltration into the politics of Bangladesh is something which the country would definitely feel rattled. I know it's very difficult for people in Bangladesh to talk about it right now, because at the heat of the movement they too can be the target. I respect that. I understand if you're speaking from ground zero. And I also understand that smaller countries, small in size, I mean to say, in comparison to their neighbors, do have this feeling ki daba nahi sakte. You can't, big neighborhood.
As you mentioned, it has happened with Nepal.
Nepal, that will not work.
Yes.
Even in Sri Lanka,
yes,
you get the same sentiment after a point of time that India cannot dominate. But I think India has to live with it because it's the bigger country. There's no doubt about it. But I think the countries which also adjoin India, I think the biggest trouble for India is, if you ask me, Pakistan is a dysfunctional democracy, Nepal is a dysfunctional democracy, Bangladesh democracy is also dysfunctional. Look at, it's like a revolution that has happened. Myanmar is a dictatorial state. China is a dictatorial state. Sri Lanka again has a dysfunctional democracy. In Maldives, we have a person who is so close to China. Our base has closed down. So yes, there is a problem in India. India has a problem on its hand. There is no doubt about it. And I'm not going to argue against it.
You know, you see last few years, Kartikeya, you saw Ashraf Ghani escaping and going to UAE, taking shelter there. You saw Gotabaya Rajapaksa, in fact, escaping, taking shelter in Singapore. You had Imran Khan, who had that opportunity but was arrested and is in Adiala jail. You had Aung San Suu Kyi, who is in fact again in jail. And perhaps now Sheikh Hasina, who is taking shelter temporarily in India and perhaps will be moving to Europe. It is significantly a study of the democracies that are there, and perhaps public revolutions, good or bad, trying to, you know, show the mirror to these leaders.
I mean, these are the visuals from Bangladesh. One atop a building, and the second people are protesting. And this is something which democracies must think about. That you might have an election, but does not mean that people are feeling the perks of democracy.
Absolutely.
And if you stop them for long, the streets will take over the annals of power. And that is what has happened in Bangladesh. It's a cue which every democratic nation should take care of.
Give it to me, pass. We'll put new glasses in the windows and they keep breaking.